This is an exclusive excerpt from the Stuph File Program with Peter Anthony Holder.
Marc Hartzman, the curator of WeirdHistorian.com, is back with a story for the month of June, and this one deals with tales of a headless chicken. Marc joins us via Skype from New York. Hi, Marc.
Hi, Peter. How you doing?
Just tickety-boo. So what's the deal with these headless chickens?
Well, the most famous of the headless chickens, of course, is named Mike the Headless Chicken. And Mike lost his head in 1945 when his farmer, a guy named Lloyd Olson in Fruita, Colorado, had fetched Mike from his yard. He was planning to turn Mike into dinner, have some chicken that night. And he swung the axe, to chop off the head. But the blade hit in such a perfect way that it cut the head off, but it just missed the jugular vein. And it left the brainstem intact. So the head came off, but the brainstem was still there, and it was still able to function. So even though the head was gone, this chicken was still walking around, basically. And it could continue to function, like I said. So it would still strut around, and it would peck for food. Like, it didn't realize its head was gone. And it had clotted up, so it wasn't bleeding to death or anything like that. And so this guy, this farmer named Olson, is watching this thing, walking around and looking for food, and no clue it's missing its head. So he decided he couldn't just swing again and make it dinner. He thought, I got to keep this thing alive. This is like a true wonder, right? So he started feeding it liquids and grains. He'd have an eyedropper, and he'd just drop some nutrients basically into the chicken. The chicken would just keep going. So this obviously, word spread, of course. People wanted to see the headless chicken. And it became a complete national phenomenon. It started touring the country in sideshows, and it was even featured in Time magazine and Life magazine. So this was it was a big deal, as a headless chicken should be, right? This went on for 18 months.
Oh, dear Lord.
Which is a long time for a headless chicken. That's very impressive. Apparently, he choked to death eventually, which sounds, I know, very weird since it didn't have a head. But that's how it reportedly died.
Well, it still had a throat.
Yeah, true. So, yeah, choked and, yeah.
Okay, you said, first of all, there are a couple of things you said that I have to go back to. One of them was the most recent one. You said 18 months, it's a long time for a headless chicken to live. I'm just thinking, what are you basing this on? Do you have a scale of how long headless chickens normally live?
Oh, well, that's a fair question. To my knowledge, the other headless chickens have not lived that long.
Okay, so you have a plethora of headless chicken stories.
Yeah, it does beg another question, doesn't it? What other headless chickens are we talking about?
Okay.
And so I do have on my site, WeirdHistorian.com, a few other stories from history of chickens that lost their heads and continue to live. One of them, we'll just jump back in history really quick, goes back to 1906. Same kind of thing. A farmer had a whole bunch of chickens. He was chopping heads off, really more for sales than for his particular dinner that night. He would sell chickens from his farm. And the same thing happened, basically, or at least very similar, right? That he chopped off this head and found it was still walking around and poking and didn't know it lost its head. So he found it was still alive the next day, and he thought this was pretty amazing. And then the chicken actually was almost stolen shortly after. It lived about 2 months, basically. So during that 2 months, it didn't exactly have the adventures that Mike had. But a chicken thief had snuck into the farmer's stable one night and stole this chicken, not realizing it was missing its head at first. And then it lit its match. Obviously didn't have all the electricity back then at night. So lit a match, illuminated this headless chicken. It freaked out. And according to the paper, the chicken thief fled with a yell, ran off without the chicken. But like I said, the report about this particular headless chicken was it lived for 2 months. So 16 months shy of the record set by Mike.
Okay. Now, I'm just curious to know, and by the way, I'm assuming that chicken thief never stole another chicken. I'm just going on that assumption. But going back to Lloyd and the famous chicken, Mike, is it, that lived for 18 months? Yep. I'm just curious, do we know what Lloyd did with the head? He didn't just toss it away, did he?
There's a picture I have on the site where he's holding the head, next to Mike. So presumably he kept his head for some time. I imagine that was part of the sideshow attraction. But you can see if you go to my site, there's a photo of it, and he's got the head right in his hand.
I'm also going on the assumption that the eyes no longer work, because I would hate to be the headless chicken looking back at the body of said headless chicken.
I would assume that's safe also, but I guess since the brainstem was still in the body of the chicken, that if the eye saw anything, they wouldn't have known what it was seeing anyway. But yeah,
point.
probably didn't work.
Good point. Now, as you mentioned, you have other stories dealing with other chickens. Now, odd as that may seem, I would assume that some headless chicken stories lead to other headless chicken stories. And since Mike was a very famous one, were there any stories either before or after of somebody creating a headless chicken to see what would happen? A doctor, for instance.
Yeah, in fact, in 1883, there's an article that talks about a particular doctor who wanted to prove that you could create a headless chicken, or in this case, specifically a rooster. And so he actually went out to do this. So he took his instruments, he took the bird's head off just above the ears, it says, and basically made sure that this thing could still live, kind of sealed everything up carefully, gave it a nice doctor treatment. And he told the paper, he said, in a few hours, this chicken will walk around with steady step, a brainless agent without sight, thought, or feeling. And according to the paper, that's exactly what it did.
For how long, do we know?
It doesn't say how long this one lived. I think it's a safe assumption, though, that it didn't go 18 months like Mike. I really feel confident that Mike is a record holder, probably one that won't be beaten.
And I forgot to ask at the beginning, why is this the story of June?
So June actually marks anniversary. This current June was the 25th anniversary of the annual Mike the Headless Chicken Day, which is a festival that's held in Fruita, Colorado. So started 25 years ago. People in town were talking about this story, and the recreation director for the town decided that, hey, this would be just a great thing for us to create an event around and kind of mark that interesting bit of history, unique history, and quirkiness that is in Fruita. Kind of a fun way to educate people about what happened there. And so they do things like they have, a race, they have a peep eating contest. I think now this current year they had sort of a booth area that taught people more about Mike the Headless Chicken and had more information about him. But it's just kind of a fun way to celebrate. So that's every June for 25 years now.
They have a race?
Yeah, a good 5K race, with your head on.
And humans are involved in this race, I'm assuming?
Yeah, this is for humans with heads on.
Are they blindfolded?
No, I don't think the race is trying to mimic Mike in any way. So people can just run it at their own, with their full faculties intact.
I want to go back to that doctor for a second. Nowadays, obviously we're talking about different times other than, 1883. Nowadays, if someone were to do this kind of experiment, they'd be up on charges of some kind, animal cruelty, going against nature, going against medical situation. I mean, gone are the days where we tested rabbits in dealing with cosmetics. So I don't know if these doctors and chicken experiments would fly literally today. Not that chickens fly, but anyway, you know what I mean.
Yeah, I imagine he would be met with a little bit of a pushback, especially if it was just like, I just want to see if it works. But on the other hand, if there's something scientific that you're learning about, how the body's function a certain way, or could this help with any kind of like transplant technology or something like that, and you find some real medical value in it, then I would think that, something like that could happen. But the way this article is at least portrayed is this was sort of just out of curiosity to see if he could make a headless chicken. It didn't seem like he was looking to do much more with that knowledge.
Yeah, if he was trying to do something more with that knowledge, I keep thinking of that Rosie Greer, Ray Milland movie, The Thing with Two Heads.
Oh, yeah. I remember that.
Yes.
Yeah, this wasn't that.
Well, you never fail to inform, shock, and amuse us, sir. So for that, I thank you once again for being on the program.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Marc Hartzman, the curator of WeirdHistorian.com. He's the author of several books, his most recent one being Chasing Ghosts, a tour of our fascination with spirits and the supernatural. You can go to my website at thestuffile.com, check out the show number for this program, which is show number 0721, and you'll find links to Marc's site, plus links to either Amazon.com or Amazon.ca, where you can order his book directly.
You've just heard an exclusive excerpt from the Stuph File Program with Peter Anthony Holder. To hear any or all of the full hour-long shows, visit thestufffile.com. Stuff is spelled S-T-U-P-H. That's thestufffile.com. A presentation of Flying Fish Communications.